Shanti. Welcome everyone who's here and Zoomers. Hi. And for those whose tradition are celebrating New Year this time, Lashana Tova, if that is your tradition, happy healthy New Year, and may it be a sweet one for all of us. So my name is Michelle, and I am your MC tonight, and I'm very grateful to be here. And it is September, so we're winding down a very transitional month. I find September to be a particularly interesting month in terms of its transition. It has its own vibrations this time of year, and I think that's why so many holidays and recognize that. But we are talking about soul power, which goes higher than everything. It's the power within. And this week, we are blessed, if you will, to have Brother Tony, who is a wonderful speaker, very erudite, very intelligent, very looking for many, many things in the world. And it's always a lot of fun when I connect with him and talk about spirituality and always learn something. And it's funny, I saw the topic, humility, and I went, whoa. Because humility, everyone, right? Humility, you know it when you see it. But what does it mean? I mean, can you put it to words? Because it is such a powerful word. And I was thinking about the people's different virtues. And I have to say, humility is so powerful because it sometimes evades us. I can speak for myself. Am I really humble? What do I think of myself? I act humble a lot of times. I put people before me, but what's really going on in there? And we talk about definitions, and I asked Tony, he's going to talk a little bit about definitions. But the power of humility, it comes from love, and we heard the song, be humble and kind. Usually humble goes with kindness. So that was a good country Western song. I enjoyed that. Thank you, Brother Eric. But power comes from love, compassion, and understanding. And most of all, and I love the term, most of all, humility, because love is, I don't want to say easy, but it seems easy. Everybody loves somebody, and compassion, for all different things. But humility, this was a real and I said to Tony, a little esoteric, but so important, probably one of the most important. And it does go without saying that in the scriptures, when it says the meek shall inherit the earth, and we're going to discuss the term meek because I think to myself and talk about it. Does the meek ever inherit anything? Maybe the definition of meek is not what it is. It's not weakness. It's really the humility. Meek, and we'll talk about that, comes from the Greek word for mild. Mild is not meek. Mild is calm, compassionate, and connected. So this is going to be, I think, a very provocative discussion because we're going to talk about the definition of humility. Do we meet that standard? How do we? And I want to learn, how can I meet that standard? And the power, the humble, because there are other better translations that say, the humble shall inherit the earth. And that is what we want to be, at peace and in heaven. So I'm going to be calling up I want to say good friend, because he is a good friend. And that is Tony. I've got to know him over the last few years, and it's always delightful to have a conversation. So Tony, Antonio Figueroa, is an architect and planner in New York City. And we now connect even more because I'm in housing. So it's another interesting connection. He worked as a government official and a corporate manager. He currently manages his own private practice in architecture. He has been a student of Raja Yoga for over 20 years, and he facilitates retreats for his professional community and participates in programs, and this I can attest to, furthering the understanding of spirituality, but particularly, again, in the worldly context of professional life. So it's very important to make, because we are spirits in this material world, how do we connect our spirituality and make it work for us every day when we're out there walk in that pavement. And no one's better to talk about that tonight than Tony. So I bring you up, Tony, and thank you so much.
The storm to come here. When this subject came up and I was asked to speak, I thought it was really a great opportunity because humility is a subject on which I have a lot of experience because of my lack of it in so many areas. So I have a certain level of expertise on what happens when you don't have it. So I was very happy to kind of get involved in looking at what this means in terms of spirituality. Um, the the critical thing for us to look at is how does humility become a superpower, right? How does that become a superpower? Which it is historically, and in many contexts, it is one of the most critical elements in it, and it's because um, it's been misinterpreted in the scriptures. We were discussing this, Michelle and I. Um, I have a version of the Bible that doesn't have the traditional King James language, which says meek. But I knew that that was not what was meant. Because if you look at the scriptures and you look at someone like Jesus Christ, you could say many things about him, but meekness, lack of courage was not on the number of things that you can ascribe to him. Yet he was the greatest proponent of being humble. So I think that was that was kind of a misnomer. Maybe it was people wanted to make a poetic allusion, but it is humility that I really think is one of the great superpowers that we have as human beings. Um, the areas of our life that are constantly affected by this are, you know, legion, but the three areas which I want to kind of talk about today. The first one is knowledge. The second one is emotions. And the last one, of course, is spirituality and transcendent values. On knowledge, again, I have to relate my own experience. There is a Buddhist quote that says, an arrogant person can overcome his arrogance through knowledge. And then there's an appendage that says, but a person who's arrogant in his knowledge is completely lost. So that's a quote that I hold tightly because it's one of the traps that we fall into, thinking that we have an understanding. So knowledge is very interesting subject in which humility comes into. There is a um, there is a writer who wrote a book called Sapiens. And it's very interesting, in which he basically says one of his underlying tenets is that the creation of this modern society, particularly what we know historically, like the Age of Reason and then Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, came from the acceptance of human beings to that they didn't know something. That's where science comes from. There is a possibility other than what I know. That possibility is really very critical in making it viable for us to grow and to develop. To use a tangible example, this is something I read about because I was always very curious why a country like Argentina, who has a literate population, a cultured people, had so many problems in terms of their economy and among other things. And there was an article I read in which they said a parallel to the United States. Now, Argentina has the richest soil in the world. Richest. It's 24 inches of topsoil. They could cut 4 harvests of just grass without doing anything a year, which feeds animals, obviously. And in 1930s and 40s, there were major exporters. They're still major exporters, but they were major exporters of agricultural products. The United States was not. We were at that point beginning to develop agriculture. What happened was interesting in that the American penchant was, let's look at different ways of doing things. It is actually one of the qualities that has made this country really great, is that we were always looking to see if there was another way. Always looking to see in agriculture, in every area, always to see if there was another way. Whereas the Argentinians, with their rich soil and their oligarchy, economic oligarchy, said, we don't need any new things. We're making enough money as it is, and we'll keep doing this. So their ability agriculturally became inferior to ours, even though their soil is much richer. And they could have been the breadbasket of all of South America. I think maybe they were at one time. But that's an example of humility. We here said, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's something else. That is the premise of this book. One of the premises of this book, Sapiens, in which he is saying that's the beginning of what we call modern civilization, that we now experience, Western civilization, is that we're saying, okay, there may be, we don't know. Maybe there's something we don't know. We know what we know, but there may be something else that we don't know. The premise of science, premise of industry, the premise of the age of reason, the philosophy. What is it out there that we don't understand? Let's try to figure it out. So this is a very fundamental requirement of society that we live in. This is where we live, where we work. We enjoy the benefits up until now. I don't know what's going to happen with the current economic program. America, and I've worked and lived in other places. I was always astounded how in this country, the agricultural products, the stuff we buy in the store, were always much more reasonably priced comparatively to every place else. They just were. And it's because of that mentality. We don't know. Maybe there's something better, which implies maybe somebody knows something more than I do, or there's something more to learn. So in terms of knowledge, it's a very important quality. You really can't learn unless you have that particular quality. Without that, there's no development, there's no growth, there's no understanding of the world around you. So the first instance of humility as a superpower, I believe, lies in there. What is it that we think we know versus what we know we know? In this country, we thought we knew stuff, but we didn't know we knew. We said we left room. That was very, very significant in the development of our society. So humility is not just a term to define diffident personalities or some sort of spiritual connotation. It is an actual tangible force that you can use to actually project yourselves into the world. So knowledge is inherent required humility, some level of humility. Without it, we're not going anywhere. We stay where we are. In Argentina, that has changed. Obviously, they could not maintain their agricultural oligarchy indefinitely. So now they've changed and they're coming back. But in the 1930s, 40s, their agriculture was 25% of their gross domestic product, and now it's 7%. So, it gives you an idea of the, there probably other factors in it, but it's an important thing to know that this is how we begin to define our universe. Not because we have inspiration and we know and we understand, some sort of, is because we look to see what it is that we don't know. So for knowledge is a very critical aspect. Humility is very critical in everything you do. The scientific method is based on the premise that we know this much. Maybe there's something else there, but we have to go and find out and prove it. We don't know it for a fact. Of course, there are people, scientific people who did this internally and came up with definition of the universe that we know, with Isaac Newton and Einstein and people of that nature. But essentially, the pragmatic development of our societies came from that. So so humility becomes something a lot more powerful, more impactful if you look at it in the context of saying, okay, I don't know everything. We don't know everything. It's not he doesn't know anything or he doesn't know everything. It's I don't know everything. It's very important. When you say the editorial we, you can make it into say, well, they don't know what they're talking about. No, it's I may not know everything. Let me leave some room for something else. So the second area that where humility, I think, is really critical, and this is something where everybody can agree, is in your emotional life, in your relationships. I don't think it's possible for you to be in love without humility. I don't think that's even remotely possible. I wouldn't consider it love if someone is in love and doesn't have any kind of humility towards the person that they're relating to. It's one of those qualities that when you're in love, that person, you want to do things for that person. You want to make their life better. You listen to what they say. You're concerned about. So in the emotional world, humility is even much more palpable. We experience it. And when we're talking about knowledge, we're saying, okay, this can be looked at in some sort of very calculating way. But when we're talking about emotions, there's no calculation. Without that level of that sense of I have to do something because this person is special, which means I'm granting this person an elevated position, which means that I'm being humble. That's in relationships, that's very, very critical, very important. And humility in all relationships, in all the aspects of our lives that have to do with the affective qualities, is very important. Friendship. Can you have friendship without humility? At least one person has to be humble. Otherwise, you can't make it work. To make it really work, it has to be two people that are humble. So in kind of the emotional context of our lives, it's one of the superpowers. It's often what makes other people love you, what makes other people feel affection towards you. It's very hard to feel affection for arrogant people unless you have a particular disposition to that. All of these relationships with people come from that perspective. Again, it's not meekness, it's not self abasement, it's not diffidence, it's quality that we have internally. So that humility comes from a very deep part of our being. Yeah. We can this is not this. Yeah,
Well,
no,
I had a
this is
question.
an interactive session. So
Oh, okay, because that's sometimes you
no,
like that. She tapped.
no, I know.
So is that okay?
I'm all for
We'll
questions.
do it at the end.
No, I'm all for
Okay.
questions.
It's not
No, that's fine. I'm glad
it's not burning. It's very meek.
it's very me. Already, I know it's going to be a powerful question.
No, you said that one has cannot be in love unless they're humble.
There's some quality of humility.
Yeah, that love could be with your parents, for your parents. But then you also mentioned friends, but like the love for your children. There's a saying, be meek, but not weak, but not weak. So when you're in an authority position, parent, child, you cannot be always meek. You love them, but you have to bring them discipline, right? You have to discipline them. And then that humility and love might be within you, but you cannot show that at the time when you have to set them straight, you know. Similarly with the elderly parents, if caregiver, yes, you love them, you be compassionate, but supposing, like, for instance, I have two elderly parents at home. If they are walking down the stairs, not holding on to the handrail, I just might shriek and say, "Oh, you got to be careful. Don't do that. You got to hold on to the handrail and make sure you turn on the lights because they have the tendency to just climb down." So, there, when you have to watch out for your children or your elderly parents or someone you love, or even otherwise, if you see somebody crossing the road and the car is coming, you just might run for it. You have to show that action, take charge, right? You cannot be meek.
No, I'm not for meekness. I'm going to make it clear. I'm trying to dispel that. Meekness is not the quality. But the issue with your children, for example, my position with my children was that they weren't mine. They were never mine. They were entrusted to my care. And I had to make sure I didn't mess it up, but they were never mine. That, I think, is an important quality to know that they're not yours. They're not yours. They're given to you, but they're not yours. They don't belong to you. They're independent creatures. So family is a very important area where humility has to be defined in very careful ways. Because one thing is to deal with your children and make sure that they're taking the right path. And the other thing is to impose on them things because you think it's the appropriate thing. If you're humble, you're saying, okay, let me try to figure out what would be the best for the situation. Now, there's a lot of parents that don't do that. They say, you're going to do this way, and that's it. And therapists are very happy about that because they spend, there's a whole billion-dollar industry on that, on parents that have done that. There's a famous, Freud, was the first to pick that up and say, okay, we're gonna get you guys, we know where you live. So it's very, very important in family. I think actually it's very critical, that quality of humility, because it's very easy to get very angry, um, and humility is a quality that is what you need when you deal with anger. When someone says something hurtful, or someone says something that's unfair, you jump to anger. But if you jump to anger, that means you're not using your superpower and saying, okay, why is this happening? Is there something else, like in knowledge? Is there something else? Is there some other situation that's happening that I should look at? The same exact situation as in knowledge, same thing it has to do in terms of your relationships. It's very important. Humility is one of the qualities that you can use to deal with anger. And anger is a really very, very bad emotion. It hurts you as much as it hurts anybody else, maybe more so. And humility helps counteract that. Say, okay, what did they say? Let me think for a minute. Maybe I said something to provoke this. Okay? Maybe I did something. So you take a position saying maybe there's something more to this than just this person's hurtful statement to me. So that I think I'm glad you asked that, because I missed the family is a very important area where humility, and again, it's not being meek. You certainly can be meek with children. That's not a good strategy. Okay, doesn't work, right? You have to have a position, but you have to also be able to understand that maybe there is another way. But meekness, again, here, I'm not promoting meekness. Meekness is not the way to go. All right, it's not the way it works. So that's in the family situation, friendship, and love. In all these contexts, humility is one of the superpowers that helps you go through it. Before I started meditating, I started coming to classes, I was into tension. I thought tension was a fantastic quality. It made me move, motivated other people around me. I did, So I thought it was acceptable. I thought that was the way things were. And I think a lot of people function this way. Certainly I did for a while. But then that tension doesn't ever give you any kind of relief. You always have to push. You're always pushing. You're always saying, okay, let's go. And that really is really one of the critical things that we have to keep in mind. That this aggressiveness, this assertiveness that we stridency that seems to be part of the personality doesn't really make us happy. Certainly didn't make me happy, even though I thought I was doing well. But I remember distinctly not being happy. It's not making me happy. Happy happened at other moments, not in those moments. So humility is a superpower that says, okay, maybe there's another way. And that's why I ended up going to various places, including here, where I kind of stayed for a while. So, that is the most in terms of your personal relationships. Humility is very important. Again, not meekness, not diffidence, not self-abasement, but looking to see if there's something else going on. Is there something else that's provoking this situation? Or is there something else that I could do to make this better? It's not just in response to a negative thing. Maybe you want to make something better. How can I make it better? Then you have to have a humble position. Okay, I have to look at what options there are. Look at things that I haven't looked at before. Again, you can ask questions. I'm going through this. This is not. I just want to go through the areas that I looked at. Then you have humility in spirituality. And there's a lot of examples that are very, very extraordinary. There's two that I want to cite. One is Catholic or Christian, and one is Hindu based. There was, everybody knows who St. Francis is. And even people that are not Catholics know who St. Francis is. St. Francis was actually a person of wealth who took the position that spirituality was based on being humble, living modestly, living frugally, living in an environment that was not engaged in all the kinds of excesses that the church was engaged at that time. He is credited by some historians as having changed the Catholic Church from something that was extravagant to something that began to look at the church that we know, a church of effacement, of humility. These are the qualities that he brought to the Catholic Church. It was very important. He created the order, the Franciscan order. He got permission from the Pope to do that. But something very interesting happened. The Pope, powerful man, obviously, at that point he was more powerful than many kings, was taken by St. Francis' humility and ability to believe in God. And at some point, he commented, I want to believe like Francis believes. And here's a man who's powerful, who has the entire structure of the society that he lived in was in his grasp. And Francis' humility made him rethink that and change the nature of the Christian faith. That's power. That was humility as a superpower over corporeal power that the Pope had. The Pope was more powerful than many kings, than most kings, actually. So that gives you an idea how powerful humility is. What kind of impact it has on our society and on the movement of the church, because the church had some issues that they were dealing with or they weren't dealing with. And St. Francis created the vehicle from which the church was redefined. The other one is a Brahmin priest called Ramakrishna. He was the mentor of Vivekananda, who is somebody who's mentioned. Well, both of them are mentioned by the founder of the Brahma Kumaris. And Ramakrishna was a illiterate Brahmin priest, very, very humble, extraordinary man. He was the kind of person that once he committed himself to something, that was it. He became that. For example, he was a celibate, very chaste man, but he married. And he was absolutely prepared to give that up and become a normal husband if that's what his wife wanted, because he married, and that's the obligation of marriage. And as far as you were concerned, once you did that, that was your destiny. You had to follow that. Now, his wife, who was also devout, was very happy with him, the way he was living his life. And so they had a very beautiful relationship. But he was not going to, in any way, shape, or form, violate whatever quality that marriage was for the woman he married. He became interested or became involved with some Christians. And in the process, he almost became a Christian. He became completely enmeshed in the Christian values, understanding them, knowing what the role of Jesus was. He really got into it. As far as he was concerned, if he could not embody that, he could not understand it. So to embody that, you have to become a Christian. And this was the kind of engagement he had. And he was the mentor of Vivekananda. Vivekananda had no such qualms about asserting himself. He was a very powerful and assertive person. Yet, Ramakrishna was his mentor. As assertive as Vivekananda was, Ramakrishna was his mentor. And there's an incident when there was an abbot from some Hindu monastery that heard about this priest, this Brahmin priest, and find out what's going on. How can this person of no authority be making such impact? So this abbot came to meet this priest, probably spent a day or so with him. He stayed for several months. He could not leave him because this man's faith was so overpowering, and the humble and gentle way he lived took this. This is in Hinduism, the people that are in charge of the various orders are powerful people, like they are in all religions. And he went to find out who is this? What is he doing? And he was completely overwhelmed by Ramakrishna's humility, and he was completely. He stayed there. He did the same thing that Pope Innocent did with Saint Francis. He wanted to believe the way Ramakrishna believed, because he recognized in there that this was something that was unique. So this haughty abbot comes in saying, I got to figure out what this person is about, and leaves realizing he doesn't know anything, that this humble person was teaching him. So in spirituality, humility is also obviously a very, very evident superpower. So that's kind of the basis of humility, comes from our spiritual consciousness of what we truly are, as opposed to what we like to be, what other people think we are. That's where the superpower comes from, because it comes from deep within yourself. So if you look at humility, this is the basis on which we can project ourselves in terms of transcending mortal coil that we all inhabit. We have to believe in ourselves. To believe in yourself requires humility, because if your belief in yourself is based on accomplishments, attainments, that's not going to be really strong, because you're going to have situations where your attainments are completely discarded. How are you going to survive at that point if your belief in yourself is based on that? It has to be based on something more profound, something deeper. So belief in yourself, belief in others. Again, like Ramakrishna, when he believed in somebody else, he believed in others to the point of becoming that person. Wasn't just saying, okay, I think that person is okay, I agree, I disagree. No, it was an embodiment. And finally, there is faith in God. And again, it's not like I learned spirituality. When you Catholics, you go to church, there's an order in the universe. There's an order in the universe, there's God in heaven, and there's all kinds of other things happening on the earth, and there's hell, and somewhere in that you're going to fit. That's kind of orderly. The Catholic Church was good about doing things orderly, so. But that's not humility. Humility is actually understanding what role you play in this whole process. And what role do you have with respect to God? Are you able to kind of find those qualities in yourself that will make you relate? Or are you just saying, okay, this is the definition of God, and okay, I'm fine with this, and we're at arm's distance. We got things worked out. Which is what I thought I had when I was practicing Catholic. I had to figure it out. I got it worked out. I had to balance. So that is the superpower that humility is. It permeates the entire human existence at every level. Without it, we will not be human beings. We will not be transcendent creatures that we are. Without it, we would not exist the way we do. Existence would be very, very, very dry. It is what gives quality to our life and gives it dimensions. So I was very happy when this subject, when I didn't think I put the subject up, but when they gave me this opportunity so I could finally talk about this, which I thought was really important. And kind of, I have a quote from Vivekananda, which is my favorite spiritual quote of all time. I don't know if you know him. He is extraordinary man. He came to the United States at the age of 26. To the United States, right? He's never been outside of India, to a conference in Chicago. He didn't know where he was going. He never heard of Chicago. He arrived in New York. No money, nothing. Found his way to the conference in Chicago. I was going to say God knows how, but God does know how, right? Went to the conference, and Vivekananda came from a different kind of spiritual discipline. He was not into the scriptural Hinduism. He took over the conference. That there were all kinds of very learned Hindu scholars there and other religions, and he took over the entire conference. He became the center of the conference. And he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know where he was going. But he had a quote that I always cite. So you may have heard this already, so I'm sorry, but I really like it. He says, "The atheist who helps his fellow man altruistically," altruism is very important. Altruism doesn't exist without humility, right? "Is closer to God than the devout person who doesn't." To me, that's kind of embodies what the quality of humility is. Because if you have it, God's not letting you go. He's going to catch you somewhere or the other. He's going to catch up to you, no matter what you think. Because those are the qualities that make you divine. So that is my feeling about humility. I think it's really very underrated. And I hope that I've convinced you that it has a lot more qualities than we thought. It's not meekness. It's not diffidence. It's not self-effacement. Humility is the ability to look at the world with the understanding that there is something out there for you if you are able to open your eyes and look at things without assuming that you own it or you understand it, because that's what makes our civilization. That was the point of this gentleman that said the book on Sapiens, is that's what makes our civilization. Without it, we wouldn't be. Western civilization wouldn't exist the way it does now. We'd still be doing rituals, milling our grain in old-fashioned ways. But so, am I doing okay, Eric? I want to make sure we don't keep people past their bedtime. Any other questions? Any questions?
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Again, it's something that we have to think about. I often, that expression, and again, it is pan. You brought up many different traditions and how they look, excuse me, back at humility. But I also thought of what is it? Let's see, do mercy. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And that's another one that is out there, if you will. And you touched on that God will only meet you at humility. I really do believe that.
Oh, yeah.
When there's an expression now, meet someone where they are. It's not just humans meet someone where they are. Don't come over here and say, do this, do that, because there's a lot of that. I'm in I'm in the, my world is, I'm right. You should, and we're hearing it all around. But the strength and the soft power, there's a word, soft power, comes from meeting people where they are. But that's the same thing with God. And I'd like to, that God will not talk to, he'll forgive and he'll love you regardless, because he loves you. But I don't think you can connect with God unless you are humble. And that's what I think walk humbly with your God is to turn over to him a lot too, that you don't have all the answers and you're not supposed to have all the answers right now, but to have that faith and humility and love that it will come. And if that connection, and we talk about that connection, sometimes you say it's inspiration. I don't think it's inspiration. I think it is a connection that allows us in that humility to connect and find answers. I had one today, and you could speak to that. I was on the train today and I had a tough day, and I just went, okay, let me settle down and connect. And amazing. There's the answer. And it had to do with I have to be more humble, let go, and tell that person, sorry, let's start again. So it was incredible just on the train coming back to come here, but only through humility would I get it. So I wanted you to speak to that, and then I'm going to hand
Yeah,
the phone.
the one of the things that I didn't mention that I think is important is that there is a quality that exists only through humility, and that's called patience. Without patience, you can't do anything in this life. You certainly can bring up children, okay? Right? You certainly can raise a child without patience. And certainly in relationships, patience is a quality that doesn't exist without humility. But there were we were talking about other things like what are the powers of the soul, right? Where does strength come from? Where does courage come from? Where does our ability to act? It comes from our basis of saying, okay, let me start first from a position that is not arrogant, that is humble, because that's where it comes from. I have an anecdote. I'm a Star Trek fan, and there was a Star Trek episode that was really incredible. Captain Kirk was broken into two people. He was broken into two people. Part of it was aggressive, hard, and assertive, and the other one was mild, meek, and so self-effacing. And it was very well written episode. And in the end, these two versions of Kirk had to come together. And in the end, it was the humble person that had the courage to make the change, to be able to come back together. The one who was aggressive, and he didn't have the courage. He was afraid. It was the humble, meek, so-called meek person that had the courage. So the point that is saying is that courage doesn't come from assertiveness. It comes from humbleness. It comes from an understanding of yourself. It doesn't come from, here I am, I'm going to overpower everyone.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to add to what Michelle said. It brought up a thought that in Hindi we say, "Mitho bolan, nih chalan, hathao bhi kuch de, rab tina de paas, uhu jangal kyun dhoonde." So what it means, to the closest I can explain is, speak sweetly, walk humbly, and give with your hands, like help others. And then the God is already with you. You don't need to go to a forest to find him. He's already there with you.
Yeah.
So that just, Michelle, whatever Michelle was saying, it brought that thought out. Thank you.
I think it was Scotty there.
It was Scotty. No, but it was it was
Joking.
no, it was Kirk that was able had the courage to, because the other one was afraid. He didn't want to.
So humility, is that,
Put it closer to you.
could it be considered like compromise? Make you compromise?
Well, no, see, that compromise assumes that you're right.
Really?
Compromise assumes that you're right. When you're compromising, you're saying, I'm correct, but I'm going to compromise because I want to make sure that this person doesn't feel. So compromise assumes that you are correct, that you're right. Humility is saying, I don't know if I'm right. It's a different thing. Compromise is a more a kind of, it's like difference between justice and divine values. Justice, we're going to make it fair. There was a evil committed, we're going to rectify it and we're going to punish that person. That's justice. Whereas divine is we're going to understand and forgive and love. Compromise is part of justice, right? Humility is the assumption that you don't know everything. Then you say, okay, what exactly is going on? Why did this person say this bad thing to me?
But then you ask questions.
Yeah,
To learn. why.
right. To learn why. And if the person has something and you're honest to yourself, say, well, maybe that could have been interpreted that way. Then all of a sudden, all the anger begins to subside and you begin to say, well, okay, it was not exactly what I thought.
Gotcha. So is anger considered arrogance?
Pretty close to it. Anger and arrogance are like,
First cousins?
yeah, they're right in there. Anger, arrogance, and anxiety. I call them the triple A's. Anxiety breeds arrogance, and arrogance breeds anger.
So the gentleman that came from India went to New York, that,
Vivekananda, yes.
wow, needed to go to Chicago. Maybe it's a soft topic, but it's just between, said that stuck out. Because he said, so he says like, God, God knew that how he was going to catch Chicago. Is that true?
What?
He said that God knew. He didn't know how he was going to get from New York to Chicago. He said he had no money, had no way to do it, but God knew.
Well, I don't know if he thought about it that way, but he knew that he was on a mission
Right,
and that he was going to try.
right. But you also said he didn't know, but God knew he was going to get.
Well, no, he said subsequent to that, he had a statement in which he said, the person who is helps his fellow man selflessly is closer to God. The atheist who helps his fellow man is closer to God than the devout person who doesn't help his fellow man. So that was a saying he said afterwards.
Okay.
His story about getting to Chicago was incredible. I mean, he's like, absolutely had to do with his faith. Yes, no question about it. But that he thought that God was guiding him, I don't know. You come to New York at the time he came, it's kind of rough. He was, and to go from New York to Chicago. I have trouble going to Chicago, so I can imagine.
Thank you. So the hour is.
Yes, we have
Thank
to.
you so much. So let me just we're going to have a few announcements after, but we'd like to do a commentary. Brother Tony, can you lead us in a
Okay,
brief?
so we're gonna do a
commentary?
little,
And then just stay for 2 announcements and then get your totally and your blessing. Thank you.
little meditation. Let's let all the surface chatter let it go. Move your consciousness away to a place inside of you place that's still, quiet, and free. Where you can just be. Experience the moment where nothing can touch you. Can move you. A place of rest, of peace, far away from all the demands outside. Place that is exclusively yours. Where nothing or anyone can touch you. Om Shanti.
Or making a very nuanced topic, very understandable. So thank you so much. And thank you all for coming. And Zoomers, thank you as well. 2 quick announcements. Next month, new month. And we are healing. The topic for next month is healing with peace. I don't want to give too much away, but next time, I think it's Brother Eric that will be this. Yes, he just raised his hand, and that's always great. Brother Eric will be probably pulling double duty. I also want to invite you, in addition to next Thursday, Sunday, October 5th, from 2:30 to 5 o'clock, It is lighting the path to a golden future, the celebration of Diwali. It's going to be a beautiful, we're going to have an exhibition, 2:30 to 3 and 3 to 5, a program. And I know this personally, we're going to have dancing and music, and it's going to be wonderful. So hopefully you will join us then, Sunday, October 5th, 2:30 to 5 o'clock. And thank you so much. And may we all walk humbly with God, and wish you much blessings. And please stay for your holy and your blessing cards. Thank you.